Chapter 8. Call Rajin. As the days went by, Sasky thought more and more about Singing Water. He wondered what Rajin said when Uncle Sobat told him about the God teacher who had appeared to him in broken light. He wondered what Aunt Gar had said. Most of all, he wondered whether Vivi might at any moment become like other children. Paco often looked at his son in a peculiar, searching manner. Could he read his thoughts? The boy wondered. Finally, on the third day at noon, he suggested a trip to the garden. "It is time we gathered some of our vegetables," he said. "There may be some ripe coconuts, too. We should go tomorrow and bring them in." "Why can't we go today, Father?" the boy asked. "Perhaps if we went to the mountain garden, he might throw off these thoughts about Uncle Sobat and Singing Water." Paco agreed that the sun was still high enough to go and still return before sundown, so they set off with 2 empty bohongans in order that they might be prepared to carry home whatever fruit of the garden was ready. Sasky wore his new charm. Perhaps it would help him, too. If he could only stop thinking about God, everything would be as it used to be. No, not quite the same, because he could never go back to Singing Water. Still, it would be better than now. The garden was close to the place where they had harvested the rice. They gathered a quantity of cucumbers, squashes, and gourds, as much as they could carry in one bohongan. They reserved the other bohongan for the coconuts. "Now you go up this coconut tree while I mend the strap on your bohongan," Paco said to Sasky. The boy took off his shirt and, dressed only in his short black pants, he climbed the tree. It was an old tree, and so bent that it stuck out from the mountainside like a crooked finger. It leaned over so far that there was no trouble at all to sit at the top and poke at the nuts. With his feet, Sasky pressed and pushed one coconut after another, letting them fall to the soft ground beneath. It was pleasant up there under the great green fronds of the palm. The wind cooled his head and rumpled his hair. He sat for a long time enjoying the glorious mountain scene below him and the delicious air aloft. His father's voice recalled him to his duty, and after pushing off a few more nuts, he scrambled down the tree, sliding the last steep portion of the trunk with his arms locked around the tree and the soles of his feet pressing the trunk on both sides. He squeezed tight against the rough bark with his naked chest and stomach. A piercing scream tore the air. The boy slid to the ground and now laying on the grass, rolling about in pain and calling, "Fire! Fire!" His father ran to him and dragged him from the spot. "Poisonous caterpillars," he said. "They must have started to crawl up there just after you did. You slid right through them." Paco grabbed a handful of damp mud from under the old trees at the edge of the clearing. He dabbed the mud on the boy's chest and stomach and the soles of his feet. In a few minutes, the intense pain slackened a little and a feeling of numbness came over him. He stood up. "Let's go home right away," he said. "Can you carry the coconuts?" his father asked. "I can try," the boy said through clenched teeth. He looked down at the redness that was changing to deep crimson over the part of his body that had brushed the caterpillars. The two set out for home about a mile away, but before the journey was half over, the boy fell to the ground. Paco carried him home on his back, leaving the 2 bohongans in the path. He called Kuning to his house at once and sent someone to bring in the bohongans. When Kuning came into the hut, Sasky was sitting on his mat, moaning and squirming with pain, which was growing worse again. The witch doctor looked at him in alarm and hurried to bring his dried crocodile and all of his other charms. He stood over the boy, shouting, "This is because the God teaching has been in this house. Let this be a sign to you to leave Rajin and his medicine alone. Now I know that your heart has turned towards the God of heaven. This new witchcraft is like those poisonous caterpillars. In the end, it will burn you. It will poison you." "Help me, Kunin," the boy gasped. "Help me, help me." "This will not kill you. Other people have suffered the same thing," the witch doctor said with a smug look. "I think this will be good for you. Perhaps now you will consider how you have offended the spirits. They are angry with you." Kunin shook his dried crocodile about the room a few more times and left the house. The boy ran his hand along the burning surface of his body. It was all bumpy and felt like large, fat beans laid close together. Night had come now, and the pain was almost unbearable. His whole body was caught up in such twisting agony that he could hardly move his legs. The stung places grew hotter and hotter, and they swelled with the poison. His head throbbed. His blood raged with fever. He called for water continually, and Paco sat by his side to give him long, cool drinks from a joint of bamboo. "Call Rajin, the boy finally let the words burst from his dry lips in a shrill scream. "Call the God teacher. He will help me." "My son," his father spoke gently, "perhaps this punishment has come to you because of the God teaching in this house. Perhaps it is because Sobat was here." The long hours of darkness were a nightmare of anguish. By morning, the whole front of the boy's body was a mass of angry red bumps like the beginning of boils. His heart beat fast. His head burned with fever. Still Paco sat by the stricken boy, and Kunin spread the news through the village. "The curse of the spirits has come to Saski," the old man gloated. "Both he and his father have listened to the words of Sobat, and this is their punishment." The news was brought to Jerub as he lay on his mat, and sadness filled his heart. He prayed aloud to the God of heaven. "Oh, send the God teacher to Broken Light today." The old chief heard the words as he ate his rice in the kitchen of his house. He left his food unfinished, and wrapping his dark garment around him, he hurried out the door. No one saw him go. No one saw him return. The old man made the trip to Singing Water in less time than many young men might have done. He delivered his message and took his time climbing the steep path home. Swifter feet than his were pressing the trail. Stronger hearts than his were touched by the urgency of his request. When Rajin and Uncle Sobat entered the hut early that day, Paco was astonished to see them. "Who called you?" he demanded. "It is I who called them," the sick boy whispered. "They have come in answer to the desire of my heart." He managed a feeble smile and said, "I will be all right now. Rajin is here." He lay in the inner room of his father's hut. His abdomen and chest, as well as the soles of his feet, were covered with boils, angry and inflamed. They were so close together that they seemed to run together into one mass of burning flesh. "This kind of hurt is worse than anything else I know about," Rajin said as he knelt beside Saski's mat. "I had it happen to me once. The same way, too. I was sliding down a tree." From his coat pocket he drew a folded paper, and in it were some round white discs as small as one's fingertip. Uncle Sobat handed Rajin the water bamboo, and he held it to the boy's lips. "Here, take a couple of these. It will help a little." Saski swallowed the 2 pills, and the teacher examined all the stung places, the boy's stomach and chest, and the soles of his feet. His arms had not been stung. The only way Rajin could account for that was to suppose that he had let go with his arms as soon as he felt the burning stings. "Do you have any coconuts?" the teacher asked Paco. Paco pointed to the bohangan full of nuts they had gathered in the garden yesterday evening. "Scratch the meat from 2 of them and press out the milk. I need it." Uncle Sobat grabbed 2 coconuts and hurried to find the coconut grater. In a few minutes he was back with the milk. The teacher dipped pieces of cloth in the coconut milk and laid them on the boy's burning skin. It felt easier at once, and a slow relief began to enfold Sasky. Then he slept. That night Rajin sat with the boy all through the dark hours. It was Rajin's hand that poured water into his parched mouth. It was Rajin who kept the coconut milk on the claws, which renewed and refreshed his body with their oily coolness. It was Rajin who put the white discs of medicine in his mouth twice during the night. When morning came, the pain had diminished, but the teacher would not let him sit up. He propped his head on a bag of rice and fed him some soft gruel for breakfast. The next day, the thick clusters of boils were ready to open, and with great care the teacher pricked each one and drained it. After this, the boy felt better than he had since the accident. The wet cloths were still laid on regularly, but now Uncle Sobat sat beside him while Rajin slept in the same room. When evening came, the moon shone through the little window into the sleeping room. Sasky wakened during the night. The oil lamp was out. He knew that his father and Rajin were sleeping close to him. The moonlight was too bright, too piercing. It sickened him. What was it about the full moon? Why had he dreaded it so much? Slowly he remembered, and he cried out in anguish, "The moon is full! The moon is full!" Rajin leaped to his feet and knelt beside him. "Yes, the moon is full," he said. "Do not let it trouble you. God made the full moon. It is beautiful. But this night of the full moon, Kuning has laid the medicine of madness against the chief's son." The 2 men were now thoroughly awakened. It was still dark. They lit the oil lamp and looked at each other with apprehension in their faces. The boy moaned in distress. "Are you in pain?" Rajin asked him. Sasky shook his head, but he sat up and rocked back and forth on his mat in agony of grief. "It is Jerab, Jerab," he cried, looking from one face to the other. "It is my fault, all my fault. I should have told you." "But Jerab is all right. Nothing is wrong with him. What do you mean?" Rajin laid his hand firmly on the boy's shoulder. "Perhaps you should tell us all about it. Then you will feel better. Kuning has made the medicine of madness against Jerab this night. It is already done. Nothing can stop it. Nothing can turn it aside." The teacher's face relaxed into a slow smile. "Your Uncle Sobat is sleeping in Jerab's room tonight. He is laying on a mat right beside him. He went over there to talk and decided to stay the night. I am sure no evil medicine will have any effect on Jerab or anyone else in that house. God is there." "You see," Sasky's father spoke, "there were only 3 mats here, and Jerab has been begging Sobat to sleep over there. He slept there last night, too, but you were too sick to know about it." So here was God again. God! He had known about this night of the full moon all along. He knew how to protect Jerab. He arranged for Uncle Sobat to be sleeping beside him. He knows how to work out all things to protect his people. It came with clear conviction. The burden he had carried for weeks lifted. He took the charm from around his neck and gave it to Rajin. At that moment a sound outside startled them. It was the sound of running feet.